Hey, nice.
Saludos, amigos y amigas de Breaking News. Miran, Coffee, que estamos en un episodio más, un capítulo más. Este que te habla, Jorge Ramos Luis, y estoy con Enrique Fernández y Arturo Ferrer. Y hoy estamos, Arturo. ¿Cómo estamos hoy? Dímelo.
¡En vivo! We are live.
Vamos live. Y hoy tenemos este episodio de hoy. Este live de hoy le pusimos Having a Beer with Julia Herz. ¿Quién es Julia Herz? Nada más.
Hey,
nada
hey,
menos.
hey.
How you doing, Julia? How you
I am
doing?
well. You guys make me even more woo woo.
More high.
Yeah. So, ¿quién es Julia? Ella es una advocate, una educadora, formó parte, hizo un libro de food pairing, entre otras cosas. Vamos a estar hablando de ella de maridaje de cerveza con comida, entre otras cosas. O sea que ella es una ducha en el tema de maridaje. Pero antes de comenzar, ¿cómo vamos a empezar, Quique? ¿Qué vamos a hacer primero?
Definitivamente.
A ver la beer.
Let's get into the beer, the most
Yeah.
important part of
Nice.
chat. What are you having there, Julia?
A Ska Dark Lager, the Mexican style lager, is one of their seasonals. And I was just in Durango at the brewery, and this was a gift from my friend Emily Hutto, who I took to dinner there. And it's a dark version of it, which I never knew they made. And it's super nice, warm up beer. And then we're going to work our way to a Doppelbock from Wibby Brewing after we sip on this.
Nice.
That sounds awesome. Ska makes some really good beers. I've had a couple.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Ska Brewing from Durango,
Brewing.
Colorado.
so Julia, thank you so much for being with us here tonight. Means a lot. You have one of the most awesome resumes, I think, in the beer industry that anybody could ask for. So hopefully we'll get to talk about a lot of cool stuff tonight. What are you guys gonna have?
Arturo.
Yo me voy a dar una No Way Gouda de
Blackwater Draw.
mi querido amigo Jorge Scott me la envió de allá de Texas. Es un brewery de Texas, cerquita de donde viven.
Sí.
Muchas gracias, Jorge.
De nada, de nada.
Chogosa.
Quique, voy yo.
I'm having a Tripping Animals beer. This can is pretty awesome with the jellyfish.
Amazing label.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's called Box Jellyfish. It's a sour ale with blueberries, passion fruit, and vanilla. So that sounds pretty interesting. It's got a beautiful color.
Yeah, beautiful.
Smells awesome.
Beautiful color. Wow.
I like that's a Tiku glass too. I call that a triangle Tiku tulip. It's a triangle almost, and it's a tulip style glass, and then it has that bump on the lip.
Yeah.
Very, very enjoyable glass in my view to drink out of.
Nice.
Definitely. It's like
Julia, do you think this
jack
is
of all
one
trades glass.
did you think this is one of the most complete glasses for drinking any kind of beer?
It is a good one. I don't have, it's funny, I would normally have, a standard Belgian style tulip, and that to me is the most hybrid. But I like the triangle Tiku. It's very versatile, and I just like it. I tried to go with a little bit appropriate glassware for you guys for my Mexican lager, which really doesn't have a glass for that style.
I know.
I have Colorado trout on my glass, and I really like the tall aspect of this glass. It's a really fun one. You can pour a tall boy into it too, even though my Ska was a 12 ounce. And then, this is a German style Weizen glass, which I'm going to drink my Doppelbock out of. Scandal, who cares? It's going to be great. And I like that this glass will support whatever color of foam I coax out of this guy when I pour it.
Nice. Jorge, ¿qué tú vas a darte?
I will have this beer from Burial Company in Asheville. Así son. Gracias. Thank you to Brenda and Luis that sent me this beauty of beer.
Nice.
So I will have it right
Also
here.
makes some fantastic liquid.
Yeah.
So, salud, Julia. Salud.
Salud.
Cheers.
Gentlemen, and to whoever is calling in on this evening of 2021 COVID era, being together virtually still at least brings us together, right? So I'm
Yeah.
grateful for that.
Definitely. Virtual
Salud.
beer. Cheers, Julia. Thanks for being here. So before we get into everything else, tell us how you got into the beer industry.
Sure. Everyone's got their story, right? I got into beer because my dad was a foodie, and he would always encourage me when I was little to think about a broad variety of food and drink. And my brother had a beer can collection. So before I was 10, I was going to a place in Washington, D.C. in the States called the Brickskeller. And the Brickskeller had 500 plus beers on the menu. And that was when I was like, I'm talking like the 70s and 80s. And so nobody knew about 500 beer type of restaurants, but the Brickskeller, you'd go down these stairs and it was super dark. And my parents would take us there to support my brother's beer can collection. And they'd always have good food and good drink, and they'd be in a good mood, and it'd be a great family outing. So before I was 10 years old, I was thinking about different beers from different producers in different styles with different, types of packages and different labels. And I always wanted to brew after that.
That get you hooked.
That's awesome.
Awesome. And the can collection sounds I think we all have a massive can collection in our kitchen somewhere on top of all the cabinets. That's pretty cool. Let's get right into the when did you decide to write, which is one of the things we wanted to talk about. I believe we have a picture of the book here so people can see the cover and know what to look for. When did you decide to write this book, Julia, on specifically food pairing?
Yeah, so beer pairing is what you're referencing, and I've got one on my bookshelf when I'll just jet away and grab it in a minute. I wanted to learn how to pair beer and food, and I came into an amazing job that was formerly held by Ray Daniels, who this group has interviewed.
Yeah.
And Ray, beer famous Ray Daniels, what created the Cicerone program. Before he did that, he did many things in beer and worked at the Brewers Association, which is the national nonprofit trade group that Charlie Papazian helped found. And when I came in and Ray left, my job was to create demand and interest for beer from craft brewers. And I knew a lot about beer. I was already BJCP certified or recognized. I was aware of how to brew. Yep, there it is, beer pairing. Mm-hmm. And yet I didn't know how to articulate pairing, and I was being told that I had to act as an authority in pairing. So that book took 7 years to write. Wow. It is co-authored with Gwen Conley, who's now with Cutwater Spirits, and she was with Lost Abbey out of California. She's one of the preeminent sensory experts in the world, I would say. And she's on Sensory Goddess in Instagram and Twitter, and I'm at Herz, Herz Muses. Hers opposite of his. And so I wanted to write a book that helped me learn so I could teach everyone else. And I'm talking about beer educators, brewers, and people in retail, because we all know how to describe what we like in beer. And we can talk about the pairing in a little bit. And I've even gotten some slides to show you. But we don't necessarily all know how to articulate food and the interactions and what's happening. And there's something called the mind to palate connection, which I've coined that. And, our palate tastes, my palate tastes this, Mexican dark lager with a little bit of dark roasted malt smoke, no smoke, but snuck into this beer. And I can describe it for you in a very, very specific way. But my mind didn't know how to talk about pairing. And that book is what we put forth because we learned how to talk about pairing. And we have some great tricks in there that I think are some of the cutting edge tricks that have helped many a cicerone and many a person that wants to pair in a home run way.
I've heard you talk about the ABC of tasting a beer, which sounds like an amazing way of you describe it in a way of like not missing any of the attributes of the beer. So could you give us a quick rundown so we can maybe try it out with these with these beers? Sure,
and I'll go to the ABC of beer styles. And the reason I created that was because of my studies in Cicerone, and I was having a hard time, and I'm looking it up while I'm talking. I was having a hard time articulating properly when I got tested at the highest level for Master Cicerone, which I have not passed, but I've sat for that test. And so the A to Z of beer styles, which I'm about to share screen now, is really a very, I think, ingenious way to allow people to have the entire list of opportunities that might exist in that beer. And I'll show you what I mean. So what I'm talking about here is, let's see if I can get it. It might just show you our screen. Here we go. You guys see my screen?
I think we're about to see it. See if the director. There it is.
Right now, there is. Yeah.
Okay. So this is craftbeer.com, and up until last year, and we've all had hard times from COVID and life changes. Well, the Brewers Association laid off a third of our workforce, and so I am no longer employed at the Brewers Association, even though I was there for a collective 16 and a half years. And I miss my job dearly, but a lot of my work is still available. Craftbeer.com is the website that I was the publisher and writer for, and so the A to Z of beer styles is on this. You can download it as a PDF. And what I'm getting at is let's just get to some A to Z stuff. So here it is. And you can literally tick off the list that if you're going to try and describe a beer, and I'll let you talk to me about it, take some time to work your way through, but let's play the game. You start with alcohol, then you work your way with brewing, you work your way through to brewing and conditioning process, carbonation, clarity, colorophone, food pairing glass, pop ingredients, etc. I won't make you guys look at the list while we're talking, but I will trigger you. So, Enrique, if you've got a beer in front of you, give me A. What are you noticing about the alcohol? And tell me descriptors that give me a sense on how intense or how calm the ethanol is. To what level are you getting it on the palate versus the tongue? Tell me everything you know about the alcohol in that beer.
In this beer, I'm not getting a very straightforward alcohol profile. It's it's got so much of the fruit and the sweetness in it. I don't know if this one has lactose too, so it smells very sweet, which is something sometimes boozy beers can smell sweet, but it's more sweet, the fruit aspect of it. So
the ethanol in that descriptor potentially is low ethanol. Is that a way to maybe describe what you're getting?
I would go for that, and I believe this beer is 6%, which is not extremely low.
Oh.
So.
Yeah.
But you really can't tell from the aroma that it's
sneaky, huh?
Yeah, it is definitely.
Yeah, so not detectable, mild, noticeable, harsh for the alcohol. Beers in alcohol can range from 3.2%, at least on the way they classify it in the U.S., up to more than 14%, right? And then fusel alcohols, which are certain type of ethanol, can also exist, and those can give you those harsh solventy type of notes. And so everything I just said is just one start to the approach where you're like, hey, how boozy does that seem? You can talk about how you get it in the nose, how it burns some of the nasal passages because it's really potent, right, and harsh. Or you can say very, very low in detection. And that's just one thing. But then brewing process, right? Let's go to one of you guys. Who's next? Who's ready to be my guinea pig?
Whatever.
All right.
I can be the one. Yeah.
Okay, great. So brewing process, what do you think they did to that beer that wasn't the ingredients? It was the process, maybe dry hops, maybe barrel conditioned, right? These are brewing process techniques. What do you think they did to your beer?
This is obviously this is a sour beer. So the technique of this beer is maybe souring the mash with some kind of lactobacillus, and then they will give some notes with the adjuncts of fruit in this type of beer. This kind of beer is the key line, I say.
I like it. So you're going for what they worked with the ingredients. And the souring aspect is often a part of, did they kettle sour it, right? Or how did they get that beer to be sour? But it can be everything from the mashing temperatures to fermentation techniques, multiple yeast additions, etc. So, and bottle conditioning too is very prevalent. All right, let's go to my friend who set this all up, and thank you for inviting me and reaching out. What kind of carbonation is in your beer? Talk to me about the carbonation.
It's a high carbonation. It's a saison, so it's right with the style. You can see it's still having a little head, and you see the bubbles going up.
Right.
So also in the palate,
Yep. Keep going.
You can feel like I don't know how you use
Tingling, the tingling.
tingling, yeah, the tingling
Yes.
sensation.
Sort of like a spicy mouthfeel
That's right. Yeah.
from the carbonation. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So carbonation can range from none, slow, medium, fast rising bubbles. It's definitely an ingredient in beer that can also lend carbonic acid, right? That bite of kind of too much carbon dioxide sometimes. Or maybe the beer was carbonated with the gas that wasn't, properly cared for or fresh. And you can also have nitrogen responsible for the carbonation. So the bubble of the carbonation or CO2 would be, a different size than that nitrogen bubble. And so I think there's a lot there to talk about. And then once you trigger carbonation, right, we've only gotten through A, B, and C, and there's 4 C's in my A to Z of beer styles, which really is like the deductive tasting of beer compared to wine deductive tasting, if you've ever heard of that. But also in C is clarity, right, color, and country of origin. So carbonation, clarity, color, country of origin is a lot to, trigger. And you just go through your list and you work your way all the way to Z. And eventually you've covered everything from hops and malt, potential for aroma and flavor, and residual sugar from your malt, how much residual sugar is left. You've got, yeast and microorganisms, and what can we talk about in that strata of options, and how that gives so many flavors like phenols and esters. So there really is a lot there, and it's a great tool to study if you're ever going to sit for Cicerone.
Nice. We have a question for our friend of us. So if you can, señor director, si puede correr el primer video.
First one.
Run the first one.
Good evening, Julia. I'm Tomás. I'm a certified Cicerone from Chile, and my question to you today is on the subject of food, and most importantly on the subject of cooking itself. How cooking and actively being a chef changed the way you view and designed a beer recipe? Thank you so much for your answer, and thank you so much to the crew of Breaking News Beer and Coffee for the invitation. I hope I can see you all soon, and I wish you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Tomás. Gracias, Tomás.
Sí, Tomás.
Señor director.
To you, Tomás. What a wonderful question. I'm going into my Doppelbock from Whibby Brewing in down the street in Longmont, Colorado. A little bit not as brown, kind of in that copper, right? Rust colored, maybe 8 SRM, 9 SRM. Super fun to see a Doppelbock. You don't see many.
Really nice carbonation. You can see the
Yeah, very nice carbonation. Yeah,
and that's why I like the Weizen ale glass, which has nothing to do with Tomás's question, but I just wanted to pour my beer over.
The first step always.
Yeah, so he asked about how, the approach of a chef maybe alters your brewing, it sounds like, recipes. And I am a home brewer. I'm an award-winning home brewer. I've won for my old ale at the National Homebrew Competition, a silver medal, which is no easy task. So very proud to be a practiced home brewer, and I still enjoy it today. And so I think the point of this question is very, to me, freeing to admit that when you are brewing beer, unless you're just always following a recipe from many recipe books, which is very reliable and helpful to do, you can act like a chef, right? Chefs use hops as an ingredient, just like chefs would use, parsley and rosemary over your pasta. So I would say that it does influence. If I think of myself as a chef, and we all are cooking for ourselves, if we're fortunate enough to be alive and using food beyond just survival, then I do approach my homebrew recipes as a chef. And I'll give you an example. There's a movie out right now that I'm in called Beer, A Love Story. You can go to beermovie.org. An incredible movie, 4K resolution, 5.1 surround sound. Frederick Mosier is the producer and director. He shot it in 6 countries. Steve Hindy from Brooklyn's in it. Peter, formerly of New Belgium, but now with Purpose, myself. Christoph from Bierall in Vienna, and just like amazing breweries. Orval's featured, Rodenbach. Didn't work their way to Puerto Rico. There's beer movie though. And
I saw
so you can rent that right now, and we are trying to get as many people as possible to rent it. And the reason I bring up the story is the scene I'm in multiple scenes, and I'm the home brewer in the movie. Christoph, who's a professional brewer, owns a brew pub from Vienna, is brewing in my backyard here in Colorado. And he goes like silent 2 weeks before he's supposed to fly out, and we were collaborating on a recipe. So I had to come up with, just like a chef would, kind of improvising. So we were going to make a Baltic porter, but it turned out that I didn't do a good job at the homebrew shop when I was grinding, getting my grains ground. And I did not put in enough dark roasted malt. So it was a mistake on my part. So it kind of, while we were brewing it, almost was this color, like a Baltic, I was calling it a Baltic red, which is a whole new style that we invented that day. And then we had choke cherries growing off the patio. And Mother Nature put those choke cherries there, and they were ripe. And if you watch the movie, you'll see the scene. And we're picking choke cherries.
I saw it.
And they have tannins. They have a little bit of acidity for sure. And they have a light level of sweetness. And so we added those. And so the Baltic red really became rusty and beautiful colored and almost seemed like it was barrel aged. And that was us being chefs to influence our recipe and using the ingredients right around us.
Wow.
Definitely a very involved process from just regular, mash and sparge and boil and the regular thing. That's amazing. Julia, to you, what's the most challenging aspect when you're gonna go to do a food and beer pairing? What would you say is the most challenging aspect of putting that together?
I love that question. And while I'm talking, I'm going to bring up a resource. And the most challenging aspect to me is that everyone does not necessarily understand that they are their own experts in tasting, right? And so when I present a dish, I'm not going to get everybody that loves it. We all have different palates. Tasting is personal. Preference is personal, right? Our perception of the world is personal. And so with that, we've got, and I do have it on the PowerPoint actually, so I'm kind of flipping through to find my flavor triangle. I just often want to get everybody on the same page to explain that if you can at least explain to me what you are perceiving, then I have a better chance to connect with you and understand what you're tasting. But that doesn't mean that I'm actually perceiving the same thing. My sense of apricots might be your sense of peaches, right? Oh, it tastes like mealy peaches that sat on the counter too long. No, it tastes like a peach, right? Canned peaches that my grandma used to make. Almost similar. Or no, somebody else is like, it's actually got some tropical notes. We all at least are talking about the same thing. And so the flavor triangle to me is a very powerful tool. And I did create this or co-create this, and it's still available, backtocraftbeer.com, and here it is. And so when I do a pairing dinner, I want to make sure that everybody understands that flavor is a fusion. It's a fusion of three things. And this is a little blurry because you have to download it, but I'll just hover here for a second. The three things of flavor are taste, so basic taste, sweet, salty, sour, bitter, umami. And emerging in the field of sensory for basic taste is oleogustus or fat. Then you also have aroma, aromatic compounds, right? Anything you're sensing that are volatile. The bananas from my Hefeweizen yeast, right? The low-level strawberries when I drink a pale ale from, Saccharomyces that is an ale yeast. And then you also have mouthfeel. Mouthfeel is the true, I think, third forgotten component of flavor. It's temperatures, textures, and pain. It's everything from temperatures, ooh, that's hot or cold, to textures like body and carbonation, alcohol warmth, tannins from malt or the barrel, or wood chips or barley. They all have, hops and the like all have tannins. And then the pain, like, spicy capsaicin heat, right? Or somebody made me a chili pepper beer, and it gets your synapses firing to have your palate say that I'm getting some spice. All three of those things are flavor. So flavor is a fusion. A basic taste, the triangle, basic taste, aromatic compounds, and then mouthfeel. And when I do a pairing, presentation, if I can get everybody on that same page, then we can all start to talk about what we are perceiving and put it in any of those buckets. It's a basic taste. It's sweet. It's, really a sense of tropical hop notes or the forest like juniper and pine. Oh, it's prickly from that carbonation, right? From what you said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And those three things are one component of discussing pairing. And then the other there's two other components. Interactions is the biggie. How are those flavors in the beer, the basic tastes in the beer, the aromatic compounds, the mouthfeel in the beer, interacting with the same things, the basic taste, the aromatic compounds, or the mouthfeel in the food? How are those interactions? So it's what are you perceiving? What are the interactions? And then what's the intensity of it all? Those are the three things.
Nice.
Very interesting. Julia, talking about the food pairing, there was any food and beer pairing that sounds great on paper but doesn't work at all in the real life?
Yeah, there's plenty of those. You guys, anyone listening or you guys could tell me, what if and I call those train wrecks, right? So those are just, they're teaching moments. You have to describe from it what you didn't like. Why was it a clash? Why was it a negative palate experience? And it's the polar opposite, a train wreck of what we're trying for in pairing, which is the home run. 1 + 1 = 5, that's a home run. Middle of the road, beer doesn't make the food better, food doesn't make the beer better, but that's most of the pairings I get, and they're enjoyable. Mm-hmm. And then there's train wreck. So there's those two things, and that's how I talk about it all.
I usually have that happen whenever I have an IPA with something that's like extremely spicy.
Well, yeah,
it just makes it like way overboard spicy. Yeah. Garrett Oliver was talking to us yesterday. He's saying New England style IPAs tend to go better with spicy foods. I assume because of the extra sweetness in them. I gotta try that one. But at least regular American IPAs with super spicy food, you really have to love spicy to make it work.
And it's a very, I think, intriguing topic based on sensory. And I have a saying that helps me remember. And there's a lot of IPAs that are drier, right? And then there's ones that are sweeter. Double IPAs tend to go better with spicy food, but yet you're getting higher in the ethanol or alcohol. Right. Mm-hmm. So alcohol clashes with spice, but yet the residual sugar or sweet calms the heat. Mm. So sweet calms heat. That's great. I do want a barley wine. I do want a Doppelbock. I do want a double IPA with something that's spicy, but yet I don't want that alcohol to exacerbate it. And so I think that's why the New England IPAs are there. And you're also with the New England IPAs removing the bitterness in the equation, which often can either clash or, depending on your personal preference, sing with capsaicin heat. So it's a game to see what works for you and what doesn't, but there's lots of different beer styles to slip in there and say, well, you want sweet, I can bring sweet to the table because sweet does calm heat.
We have a question for our friend of ours, Salitre. What is the most difficult beer to pair?
It'd almost be a more fair question to say what's the most difficult food to pair. I can take any beer and pair it successfully. So game over. I don't think I don't think that's a hard enough beta. That, toss me something else. I can pair anything successfully with a beer. It's sometimes, though, with food, people talk about how wine is really terrible with artichokes, right? And asparagus. It's because of a certain chemical component, and then things get very vegetal, and the tannins in the wine certainly fall apart and go flabby. But I can even pair, beer to an asparagus or a, something that's tough, like Brussels sprouts. I would put a Belgian wit with Brussels sprouts and kick any wine's ass that was trying to pair. And red wine really does have game in a lot of arenas. So does white. Cider's got incredible attributes these days. I'm a big fan of mead and whatnot. But I'm not answering your question because I can pair any beer.
Nice.
Game over. Anything is.
Yeah.
Julia, if you can choose one beer and one food that makes the perfect pairing, what will be?
I would like to answer that, and I'd like to read a passage from my book, if that's okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's right here, right? My
Go
book.
ahead. You are the boss. You are the boss. You are the boss.
I'm not
Don't worry.
leaving.
Vamos a esperar a buscar el
Gente,
libro.
¿qué se están tomando hoy? Los que están viendo el episodio, ¿se están dando una birra o están secos?
¿Qué se están dando? Escríbanos. ¿De dónde nos están viendo? Escríbanos. ¿Desde qué país? ¿De qué parte de Puerto Rico? Escríbanos. Comenten. Bien, saludos.
Esto es una clase de gratis.
Y gracias a todos, en verdad, por sintonizarnos y por estar viéndonos en la noche de hoy.
Definitivo.
I have so many in this book of beer pairing. I really do have so many. Gwen and I, we took the top 25 beer styles and showed the world how we articulated it, right? The style and the food, and then what to try and how we felt that the pairing went. And that's such a healthy exercise is to try to pair and discuss with yourself or out loud or others what you're perceiving. And the hardest part often in pairing is not what you're perceiving. That's the enjoyable part, and hopefully it's not a train wreck, right? But describing it, that's the hardest part. So here's a great way, and I have a couple of these in my back pocket if you want me to do more, but the question was, what's my favorite pairing? That is definitely, English style bitter and fish and chips.
Wow.
Classic. Nice.
Yeah, so you guys are nodding, and if you go to England, this is a classic, I think underappreciated world's great pairing. So here we go. The fish fry. The best party I hosted ever was a Friday night fish fry in my old mountain town of Nederland, Colorado. It was one of those parties that hit on all marks for me and fired on all cylinders: friends, food, fun, and drink. My now husband and I had just started dating, and we decided to bypass the ever-popular potluck in favor of a fish fry for our friends. We had brewed homebrew for it, too, of course. We made an English-style extra special bitter, ESB. We kegged half the batch and bottled the other half. We bought the best cod, which is a very white fish, kind of mild, neutral type of fish fillet. Best cod fillets we could find, and used the ESB in the fish batter recipe. With about 50 guests, as the evening went on, the fried fish got more and more flavorful since the oil became increasingly seasoned with each fillet that swam amidst the greasy heat. When the keg kicked that night, we moved on to the bottle-conditioned ESB. I remember going to snag some of those bottles from their hiding place under the stairs and offering up to the guests as the height of happiness. The aroma of frying oil filled the air. The flavor harmonies of ESB English bitter, pale malt like caramel, biscuit, honey, earthy maris otter, the breading of the fish batter, and fried oil were simply simpatico. The beer and food fell into each other like two high school kids on their second date. And I haven't even mentioned how the earthy English hops from the ESB found their way to the dill sauce in the tartar. Trust me when I say, once you go homemade tartar with dill, with fresh dill, you won't go back. So that's description and pairing, and in a very romantic way. And then we can even get more specific and deliberate. I've got one of my favorites, which was a surprise when we did the book, was Flanders Red. You don't see many of those styles, but you guys are nodding. Beautiful, brown malt-based Belgian style with a high note of acidity from acetobacter, very vinegar-like driven notes, but not very high in alcohol, usually not more than 6%, and some tannins. And that beer, and the way to describe it with lentil soup, to me, is one of the classic ways to say, I have found now that I know how to talk flavor, the way that I can explain it to myself and others. And who'd have thunk that, lentil soup and Flanders Red would be one of my favorite pairings.
I recently had a Flanders from Castile. It was a nitrogen, one of the new cans that are nitrogen infused, which is fantastic. I hope they make it to Puerto Rico at some time, but it was awesome because I've had the regular Flanders from them before, but with the nitrogen, it was just like took it to another level. The mouthfeel was awesome.
I have to say something. I want the fish and chips. I'm hungry.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, you found me the cheap chips.
classic combo.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
I have
Julia,
a USB in my fridge right now. Homebrew.
and you usually homebrew, yeah. Those are always good. Julia, you mentioned at the beginning of the show, which is obviously a big part of your career. You worked for as the craft beer director for the Brewers Association for 16 and a half years.
Combined, I was there for a different role as well. But yes, I was there for that long.
And from 2007 to 2019, the market value, basically the annual sales for independent brewers went from $6 billion to $29 billion a year.
Yeah,
which is like you can't even fathom the.
Yeah.
Have you seen that type of had you seen that type of growth in anything you had done before? What do you think were the major contributions on behalf of the Brewers Association to make that happen?
Sure, great question, because we all kind of witness history, and I mean, wherever you are right now in the States, in Puerto Rico, wherever country, you're likely seeing a blossoming of the number of breweries and the amount of sales for what now the world is referring to as craft beer. And I'd never seen anything like it. Sure, maybe you can point to when road biking happened, and then mountain biking was an industry, a spin-off industry. Think about snowboarding from skiing. Those kind of things are good examples of what went on in beer, from mass-produced lager, which was the world international lager. That was beer, and many people still love it. It's nothing to scoff at. It's still the majority of sales is international lager. But yet, when craft beer started to emerge, and you asked about the Brewers Association, it's because I think the Brewers Association created a common community of breweries that could be represented on a national level and network with each other. And they were defined, right? The craft brewer definition of small, independent, and traditional, which eventually traditional was dropped as part of the definition, but all definitions evolve. That definition really helped. And the Brewers Association and Charlie Papazian were right there to do things like create Great American Beer Festival that started in the 80s and really had the main U.S. competition, it's U.S. territories too. Puerto Rico was always in there, which is cool. And it really was a incredible thing to see and be a part of and be a voice to say these small businesses demand a chance, and they're making kick-ass beer. And craft beer taught the whole world about how to innovate, right? This is a United States small Colorado brewery making a German-style Doppelbock. And then the U.S. taught the world how to take certain beers and make them sour, right? In a different way than Flanders Red would be sour, right? Or Goza would be sour. So the answer is I had never been anything a part of that innovative. And I was excited to get the opportunity. And, the association definitely has had challenge times, just like every brewery and small business and family, because of COVID and the pandemic. And it is an interesting thing to watch how breweries now are having to adapt, and not as many closed as I thought. Thank goodness that is the case. And we'll see what happens 2 years from now too, because it could be a big shakeout, because businesses just aren't be able to keep up. But the more we can all support each brewery and buy direct from those breweries, the better.
Thanks.
Julia, I have a question for you. How did you come with the independent craft beer seal?
It's right here.
Yeah, we got it right here. Yeah.
Yeah.
There it is.
Enrique, thank you for showing that. Yep. The upside down beer bottle.
Yeah.
So that came out in 2017. I was one of the lead people behind the scenes, supporting that. We had great resources and a great community of minds. And so in 2017, when we finally launched it, and I was fortunate enough to be the spokesperson for that effort, we had 432 breweries sign up for that seal on the first day, which is incredible. And then now today, more than 5,000 breweries put it on their can, their bottle. Yeah.
I see it in almost every craft beer I pick up now.
Awesome.
There's still some but it's obviously a huge amount of the breweries that are, And right now it's like, what is it, 8,000 something breweries in the US? It's nuts. That's another thing that changed a lot from you started in the Brewers Association. I think it was like 1,000 something breweries to 8,000 something,
It's like a
which is like amazing.
Yeah, Enrique, you're very well read. 1,450 breweries in 2007 when I did come as craft beer program director, to more than 8,000 at the end of 2019. So it was and is a boon. But back to the pandemic, you know, I hope we don't have closures in the broad way. I mean, beverage and hospitality though is having a really hard time. But we might be on the other side of it. You know, vaccinations are starting to trickle out, and everybody in beverage and hospitality, I think, has hopefully the opportunity to get their shots because they're busy serving us. They're busy seeing hundreds of people a day. And that, I think, will make me more comfortable as once the vaccinations are out there, we can go back out to breweries. I'm already doing it outdoors. But I'm ready to go back indoors, ready to go see a big band and dance.
Yeah, please.
Everybody's
waiting for that.
Since we're on the topic of the pandemic, I think the second video question we had from a local beer enthusiast here sort of touches on that subject. We should maybe run that so Julia can.
Señor director, dale para
un gran saludo, Julia, desde Puerto Rico. Mi nombre es Eduardo Fontanes y soy un entusiasta de las cervezas. Es admirable tenerla aquí con los chicos de Breaking News. Veo que usted es una portavoz y especialista en el área de mercadeo en la industria cervecera. Le pregunto, con esta situación de la pandemia por COVID-19, ¿qué cambios recomienda que deban tomar las cerveceras y distribuidoras para poder evolucionar sus productos y aumentar sus ventas que han sido afectadas por esta pandemia?
Gracias, Eduardo. Gracias por la pregunta.
We do have the translation.
Don't worry, we have it right here.
Yes, thank you. I caught some of it, that he wanted a brewer or beer recommendation, but this is very helpful. Thank you. And I'm a terrible American public school system graduate. I did not do my diligence.
No, don't worry.
So what changes would you recommend brewers and distributors take in order to evolve their business and increase their sales that have been affected by the pandemic? It's a big one. The changes are obviously getting a line on your website as its own channel. So sales have now, in most states, been a kind of a special case that we hope to see become permanent, where brewers now, at least in the U.S., can sell direct to consumers in most areas. You're able to do curbside pickup, able to do delivery, right? Able to ship out of state in almost 15 states. That was unheard of March 2020. And Drizzly, the big website that is growing by leaps and bounds, and just had a procurement with Uber, believe it or not, they were able to say before the pandemic in the United States, beverage alcohol sales was 2% online, right, direct to consumer through the website, e-commerce. And they predict by 2025 that's going to go to 20% of all beverage alcohol sales will be through e-commerce and direct to consumer. So that is a testament to say the biggest thing, and I am working in this space and helping breweries evolve their websites, is to act as if your website is its own sales channel, just like your tap room is its own sales channel. You want to set goals for it, and what's your check average, what's your basket ring average, make the experience less clicks. Make sure your technology that you are using is able to streamline with your back of house and your inventory system and your point of sale system. So that's my answer. And I loved the beer map, the flavor maps behind him in that question. That was awesome. Those posters. I'm dear friends with Draft Labs and Lindsay Gerdrum and really great people through Draft Labs that created those beer maps. And it's a great thing to see on the wall.
Thank you again, Eduardo, for the question.
Thank you, Eduardo. Gracias, Eduardo.
This pandemic, it's been, like you were saying, Julia, it's obviously been horrible, but it's also brought a lot of changes that, I think companies eventually had to make regardless of the the online thing, the being able to deliver beer to people at their homes, directly for breweries. I know in California, there's a lot of that going on. In other states, they're trying to pass laws now to allow them to, self-distribute so that's awesome. I think that should stick around even if this thing gets back to normal.
Normal.
Right, I agree. And self-distribution basically is, and you're referring to it almost as selling direct through the website. And it's not a right, it's a privilege. And before COVID, there were 35 states, give or take, that allow breweries to self-distribute and sell to the retailer. And certainly when you get over 100, 200 accounts, go to the professionals, go to the distributors. They're in this space for a reason. And if you're a logistics expert, you're often not a brewery expert and a beer expert. And the two are really both very high specialties. So you go to the brewers or you go to the distributors when you get a lot of need, but self-distribution is key. It's important. And also through the website now, I really am bullish on it, and I'm excited about it because every other industry has it. And wine had 45 states before COVID already that allowed sales through the website, and beer only had, less than 10.
Wow.
We have another question from the Beer Talking Craft Beer. It's another local beer podcast here in Puerto Rico. I think can you read the question on the screen, Julia? You can see it, right? Yeah.
I just want to mimic everything he does. I love it.
Gracias, Andrés.
That's so great. Okay. In an up and coming craft beer movement like we have in Puerto Rico, which I would love to see in person, wink, wink, we would say, what would you say is the most important educational aspects we should be pushing to help more people understand craft beer? I love that question, and especially since you'll probably come back to me if I asked you, well, do most people think of beer just as, international lager? Is that true?
Yep.
So that's the educational, juice. You've got to twist that and get people understanding that beer is a culinary, part of the culinary arts. It goes with food. There's more than 160 documented beer styles by the Brewers Association on the books. Beer is more than just, international lager. And when you compare it with food, the way I describe my fish fry, or I could read you my pairing about, lentil soup and Flanders red and make your mouth water, that's, I think, the juice. That is, the fresh beer in a glass. The majority of time, we're not just drinking this alone. When we have beer, the majority of time, people are eating it with food. And the way the wine world has so much traction in those huge wine books and lists when you go in restaurants, and the huge shelf space at retail is not because people are just going to say, I'm going to drink some wine. They're thinking, what am I going to eat with it? So I really am bullish on food pairing, and that's where I would suggest focusing to win over hearts, minds, palates, and the wallet.
Nice.
I always say if somebody says that they don't like beer, they just haven't tried enough beer. Always something for everybody. Julia, we have we have a local homebrewers club here in Puerto Rico. A lot of people making really good beer. We do several competitions during the year. It's not BJCP level, all local stuff. Particularly referring to the judging, like as a BJCP judge yourself, and I know you've done it several times, so you could know more than anybody. What tips would you give to somebody that wanted to maybe get into judging local homebrew competitions? Like, what could the club do to get more people interested in becoming a judge, even if they don't homebrew necessarily themselves?
I love it. I would suggest getting some videos. What's that?
Homebrewers de Puerto
Rico. It's a great logo. First of all, competitions are off limits a lot of time because it's a serious space, right? You don't want lots of talking. When I'm judging, and I judge at the highest level of, say, Great American Beer Festival and many great competitions, it's serious work. That said, if you can get some snippets of video of what's going on in the judge room without compromising the competition and show people the actual work that's going on, I think people will get it. And one of the truest joys I get with judging is judging with somebody else. And you're often at a table, hopefully with more than another person, because that's more true to the competition entry, is at least 2 other people. So a triangle of palates for each entry. You can certainly judge a competition just as 1 person, 1 entry, or 2 people, but I prefer 3 or more. And the discourse and the conversations that I get into, that's my learnings. That's the experience that teaches me more deeply about my ability as a sensory creature, because I miss things, right? We all have blind spots. We all have what we're very predisposed to pay attention to in the glass because of our experience. So when I judge with other people, I learn more about beer and I learn more about myself. And it's that kind of video that I think if you got a few snippets out there from an actual competition and showed people that, and then said, hey, we're soliciting people to be judges. And the first step is stewarding. That's how you get to be in the room, but you're not at the table. Come join us. Then you, I think, might start to reel people in, because they will spend an afternoon and really start to see the value and the joy of it. And it is truly one of my favorite ways to spend time, is sitting and judging, because of the discourse that I have with the beverage in the glass and the focused time on that, instead of just drinking at a bar, which is great too, you know, live music, but I'm not as dialed into what's going on here. That mind to palate connection, you know, the mind's not just focusing on what the palate's tasting, then my mind's focusing on the music, which is also sensory, and the noise and the sound and the vibe and the smells in the room and who's wearing what visually, and, you know, all that. So that's what I would try to express, and see if you can bring some people in that way.
Can you talk about the gray for good?
Oh, you guys!
We saw the video recently. It's awesome.
We do our homework. We do it.
Yeah, you're right. You are okay. You're really kind of melting my heart, because you're such a charming. You know, so I'm pulling up the website. Back to when I got laid off from the Brewers Association, I was crushed. I was gutted. I was, I grieved it. And, you know, COVID caused layoff. Nobody plans for that. And when I went through it, I said to myself, what do I care about? And I definitely said I care about beer. I want to keep working in beer. And I do consult now. I'm a consultant and a professional speaker. But I also had this lyrical rap song that, I had written, and it's lyrical poetry, and here's all the lyrics and whatnot. Here's a scene from the opening scene. I talk all about it. And I really got going on this 2-minute video that then allowed me to show that the world should support women who go gray. And so these are scenes from the video. And when I did it, I said, is it just going to be a video? No, for somebody else, it'd be a campaign. So it is a campaign. It's a global campaign, and it encourages women to go gray for good, which really is about me. My hair is gray. I don't know if you can tell. And allowing myself to go gray for good and feeling comfortable with that. I'm 52. I'm in my prime. I should not feel like I'm declining. I'm getting better. You know, we all have to brush ourselves off from things like layoffs, and hopefully, you know, we can pay the bills, and we're not, you know, we're healthy, and the rest will work itself out. And so I wanted to do what brought me joy, and it brings me joy to say to other women, go gray for good. It's okay. I pulled it off, and it was hard for me to do. And then also I'm encouraging women to say, I'm going to use my gray hair for good, take the money that I would have spent, which I calculated to be in my lifetime if I colored my hair, you know, 6 times a year, like I was doing for years, and you do it for 40 years, which is basically what happens if you know, your hair starts to go gray in your late 30s or 40s, you know, and you live to 80. My God, that's like $20,000 plus, which is crazy. Crazy, right? And if you take $20,000 plus and multiply that by 42 million women that are probably coloring, that's billions and billions of dollars. And so I want to help women and girls causes with that money, because they are severely underfunded. And my website, grayforgood.com, has the video and all the research and what the campaign is all about.
Nice.
I can relate to that cause, because my mother has gray hair since you know, it's just have this lovely gray hair, and my mother has green eyes. I don't know, it is very beautiful to me.
I mean, might as might as well take all that money that you were saying, Julie, and put it to, you know, a fantastic cost like that, or just get some more great beers to enjoy.
Right.
Why not?
Do yourself better. do what you want with the money. And the point is that women are enough. We're all enough. Men are enough. We're all enough, whether we're short, tall, you know, black, white, fat or thin, heavy or thin, you know. I mean, it is important. We're enough. We are our beautiful, authentic selves. And so I want the world to not feel like anyone should look at me differently because I have started to age, except hopefully looking at me more mature and wise. And that happens with men commonly as they go gray. But when women commonly go gray, they get shamed. I've been on the receiving end of that. And I don't think it's right. So I took a stand and I made an awesome video. And if you watch the video, share it.
Yeah, I watch it.
Definitely. Yeah. Go look up Great for Good and watch it, people. It's very entertaining too. You'll enjoy it. So awesome.
So Julia, what do you do? What do you recommend for someone that gonna get involved in the beer industry? Baby steps. What are the first steps that they want to do, or they want to know more about beer? What do you suggest?
Yeah, and you guys will have your answers because you're busy turning many people on to, you know, beer in a great way. It's find your community. You can be a lone little homebrewer like me, and I started going to my local homebrew club, just like they should go to you guys, right? And that I found community there. I found people that supported me and didn't feel like my questions were silly. And start brewing. You can brew stovetop a gallon at a time. You can brew outside on the patio like I do with a 10-gallon, you know, stainless steel setup that's all grain. You can do it either way. And you don't have to brew, but if you do brew, you can brew simply. If you can make soup, you can make beer. Just do, you know, extract brewing.
That's right.
When it get more complicated, dip some grains in like a tea bag, you know, partial grain, or you do a whole mash, you know, all grain brewing, and now you're really brewing like professional people. And you can also go to your brewery and, you know, show up once a week, sit at the bar, only go to breweries that make you feel welcome, and most of them do, and sit at the bar and say to the bartender, I want a flight. I don't want you to tell me what I'm about to drink. I want 4 different beers. Yeah. And don't look at the menu. And try the beers, think about them, start to get your repertoire of the styles. I have the BJCP app on my phone, which tells me the 2015 and the 2008 style guidelines. And so when I test a beer, I often don't allow myself even to look at it, right? That's you start to get a preconceived notion when you look at your beer. Yeah. So I try beers from other people that have served me. They don't tell me the style. Sometimes I try a beer and don't allow myself to look at it. Then I start to guess the style. And then you get into the fun game of, wow, my mind to palate connection is starting to sync. And so those are some of the suggestions that I would recommend.
Nice.
The other day we had like an off flavor tasting session at our house here with just 4 or 5 people, and at the end we sort of had like a blind tasting of different styles, and it really, you know, blows your mind that you've been drinking beer. Like we've been drinking beer for 10 plus years now. You know, we like to think we know our A, B's and C's, but it's still like really blows your mind when you're like, I don't know what the hell I'm tasting. Yeah. It's starting to get really, there's so much complexity. There's so many aromas that you know, cross over each other.
And there's bias, right? And, you know, the bias of how we look at each other as people who we're predisposed to want to spend time with is most like us, whatnot. That's, you know, something we all have to get past. It's the same with food and drink. And so one of the best tastings that was most influential to me in my early days in Colorado was a tasting. It was a wine tasting, actually. And everyone, the only thing you did was you were asked by the host to bring a bottle of wine and put it in a bag. Could be a black bag, you know, fancy. Could be a paper bag, didn't matter. But you had to have a label on it, and you named it like a vegetable, just a random vegetable. So everybody at least could say, oh, I loved that asparagus wine, even though it didn't have asparagus in it. I love that carrot wine. And then at the end of the night, we revealed. Some people had brought like $2 chuck, right? Like Trader Joe's crazy, you know, very inexpensive blended wine that often does stack up better than $10 or $15 bottles of wine. Some people have brought $100 plus bottle of wines. And some of the wines that were maybe valued at $20, $30, $40 performed way better than the really high over $50 value ones. So try some beers and put them in bags and don't unreveal and give them a name, but don't unreveal to the end of the evening. And it's such a fun, delightful game. And you really will learn that you're a little biased for things until you, shed that bias. And the label often, the producer creates that bias. It can be good bias, right? Oh, it's from Sierra Nevada. I'm going to love it, right?
Yeah,
oh, it's from that brewery down the street that opened up 2 weeks ago. I don't know. It could be totally different. So you gotta challenge yourself, and that's a fun way to do it.
Nice.
That sounds like a great idea for an episode. We should have people put that together for us. A couple beers in bags and do it live and see what we come up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Julia, what are your future plans?
Future plans. Well, I keep going on vision quests. I really, when I got laid off, I had always wanted to work at the Brewers Association, rest of my career, grow there, continue to lead. So I had to reinvent myself. And so my future plans now are a lot less long-term, and they were kind of more immediate. I want to continue in consulting. My website, HERZ-Muses.com, has kind of a display of the services that I do, and I want to professionally speak. I want to earn a living from speaking and bring my joy of, cause marketing and appreciation for food and drink and definitely beer to the world. So those are my immediate professional plans. And I want to, from COVID, I think appreciate more, be more grateful. And I want to get a lot more outdoors time in. That's a biggie. I love going outdoors, hiking, camping, sleeping outdoors is great. So I'm a little mystical in these days and era. And I don't think I have any big ideas of grandeur besides growing my business, Herz Muses, growing great for good, and continuing to have connections like this over beer.
Yeah, nice. So, Julia, if you can tell I know that you already mentioned it, but if you can tell the people your media, social media, where you find out in Instagram, in Facebook, if you can tell them, the audience.
Okay, great. It's hers, opposite of his. So HERZ, muses, like I'm thinking about something, MUSES, HERZMuses.com. And then on Twitter, I'm most active there, is at Herz Muses, and then I'm also Herz Muses on Instagram as well.
Nice. So
thank you so much for your time, Julia. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
it's an
honor for us.
Masterclass in a lot of things.
Yeah, we learn a lot. Yeah.
We have a comment from Alex.
We have a master class in here.
Definitely.
I was literally, thank you, ALMC. I was going to say, make sure to tell me how we can work out getting me there when you guys are able to have, an in-person something. I would love to hang out. Let's brew beer. Let's talk beer. Let's taste beer. That would be great. It'd be so great.
Maybe pairing with Puerto Rican food.
We usually do for the local club, the homebrew club does the Caribbean Homebrew Cup, which they do every year. That would be freaking amazing if you could be here and be a guest judge on that.
Wow.
That would be awesome. That's usually in September
or something like
that. September
from
Okay. September 2022 or maybe 2021, who knows, but you guys make me think of one of my favorite events that I ever went to beer wise. Time to share it real quick or
sure. Go for it.
It was in Chicago. It was from a outlet called the Drinking and Writing Brewery. And they were a performance troupe where they were involved with actors. They paired a home brewer with a chef with a performance artist. And they each had a table at this event. And you would walk up to the table and you drink the home brew and you'd say, what's up with the pairing? Explain to me why you have the food with the beer, blah, blah. And then every 15 minutes, and they had a boxing ring in the bar, and this was at Haymarket Brewery in Chicago, which I just can't believe Pete Crowley, amazing brewer. He owns it. I hope he's doing good.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yes, so sweet. I love it. So,
Yeah.
so the back, I don't know if you went to the back, but they had a boxing ring. And so every 15 minutes they'd ring the bell, and no matter what was happening, and there was like 15 tables, and it was 15 home brewers, again, each with a chef. And then there was a performance artist just lingering about. And the performance artist every 15 minutes got 5 minutes to act out the pairing. So they had to work in a sense of, am I going to write a poem about it and read it? Am I going to act out Shakespeare tied to this pairing? What am I going to do? And it was off the charts crazy fun. And it was just very memorable.
Nice.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
Anytime there's a brewery with a boxing ring in it, it sounds like
Totally.
something cool is gonna happen.
So before we go, Quique, ¿dónde te pueden conseguir? Dímelo.
A mí, Enrique Fernández, Facebook y la esquinita Jardín Cervecero, ya saben, estamos allí de miércoles a sábado. Cualquier beer que necesiten, estamos a sus órdenes y se les agradece.
Arturo, dímelo, ¿dónde te pueden conseguir?
Me pueden conseguir en Facebook como Arturo Ferrer y Instagram como Minimalist. X y T.
Importante.
Jole, mira.
A mí.
Acá, a Jole.
Estoy aquí. Antes de irnos de este live que fue majestuoso, bello y precioso, voy a hacerlo en plural. Queremos felicitar a mi amigo, a mi hermano, Che, a Camila por el nacimiento de tu hijo.
Che.
Felicidades, Che.
Felicidades,
Tu
Che.
primogénito, Nico, felicidades, bienvenido a la isla del encanto, Nico. Pues a mí me pueden conseguir en Facebook bajo HERZ-CRAFT Ramos Lugo, en Instagram bajo Ramones Brew. Y vamos para atrás, señor director. Pero antes de irnos, queremos decirle que el 12 de abril tenemos una invitada también de lujo, nada más y nada menos. Vamos a tener a Carol Stout. Va a estar el 12 de abril. El 12 de abril a las 8. Apúntenlo. Y también puedo dar una premisa. De aquí a un par de meses vamos a tener algo relacionado a un pez, a un perro, no sé, algo así. Ustedes se lo pueden imaginar. De aquí a un par de meses se enterarán de un pez y un pescado, yo no sé, algo así, yo no entiendo. Algo así. Pero nada, otra vez, thank you, Julia. It was an honor. It was a pleasure for us.
Yeah, I don't know. It was super fun. I love this episode. It was great to get to have a beer with you and really appreciate your time. Appreciate you've done everything you've done for this industry. So, cheers, Julia.
Cheers. Salud, Julia. Salud y peseta, y que no se vaya para la foto. Ya sabes. Don't go. We are going to take a photo in a few.
We'll take a screenshot after the
Yeah. So, Julia, será hasta la próxima en Breaking News, Beer and Coffee, Salud y pesetas.
Y pesetas.
Ay, thank you.